So we're going to start with a tabletop, hands and knees, and we just move our torso around a little bit. This is called marauding bear. And you don't have to do what I'm doing, but you can use what I'm doing as the kind of basis of what you do. I'm just moving, I'm feeling my back. And I'm just using the movement to try and alleviate myself of the stiffness. So, I don't know about you, but I only woke up a little while ago. And so I still feel that stiffness. And then I've also had a little bit of trouble with my back recently. I'm actually going to go see my chiropractor today. And so my hope is that I still feel a little bit of pain there. So moving does help with that. Just moving a bit helps. All right, and then when you're done with that, you can tuck your toes, lift your hips. This is the down dog. Now, I hope you can feel for yourself that the marauding bear is about your torso. This is more about your legs, stretching out the legs. Okay, so we pedal back and forth. Roll the toes, circle the ankles, bend the knees. Okay, and then our first active yin posture is going to be dragon flying high. Left foot forward, okay? The foot directly under the knee, the hips as far forward and down as they'll go. And then we just raise our torso up and back like so. Okay, now you can do whatever you want with your hands. The main thing is we feel a stretch here at the front of the right hip, okay? That's the hallmark. And so part of that is raising your torso up and back. If I'm here like this, then I'm going to feel this left leg. I'm not going to feel the right leg. So I raise myself up and back. And, some people, they don't like this posture. It's kind of intense, and they might feel like it's very aggressive for yin. But again, I've studied with Paul Grilly, and he's a gentleman that published the first book with the words yin and yoga together. He's definitely an authority on the subject. And he opens his DVD with this posture, with a dragon, a series of dragon poses. So dragon is absolutely part of the yin practice, even though I think for perhaps less trained yin teachers, and some people teaching yin yoga have zero training in it, it may not feel like yin. And to me, this is where education is important. Yoga isn't really meant to win you any popularity contests. In fact, there are many things we can do in yoga that people may not like. It might not feel good in the moment. Yoga is really about a longer term benefit. And what you'll find is a lot of things that we do that give us a long-term benefit just don't feel very good in the short term. Things like maybe eating broccoli. I actually kind of like broccoli, but if you don't, it's good for you. But while you're eating it, it may not feel very good. Or, abstaining from eating chocolate cake if we like chocolate cake. Well, it might feel really good to eat the chocolate cake, but in the long term, we're not really doing ourselves any favors in terms of our health. So this is just an important principle to keep in mind, because what I find as a yoga teacher is people will resist certain exercises, doing certain things, just because they don't like them. But that really shouldn't be the way we measure what we do in yoga. It shouldn't be, I do yoga just because I like it, or I only do yoga things that I like. It really is, again, about a longer term benefit. All right, let's switch sides. You can come through tabletop or down dog. It really is up to you. Okay, and then again, we want to raise that torso up. Sorry if my top of my head is being cut off there, but just only have so much room in terms of the camera. Okay, so now it's at the front of the left hip. My left hip is one of my current trouble spots in my body. I think maybe when you get to my age, you just have various areas that are giving you trouble, and you can heal one area and then maybe another part starts to go bad. I don't know. I'm just sharing my experience, but my hip's been kind of bothering me for a while. It's not a showstopper. I can do everything I want to do, but there's certain things like this position that can be painful. So I'm hoping to work with a physical therapist, hopefully, I don't know, next few months and alleviate that. One of the things that many people don't realize, and I think I spoke about this in another class, is when we injure a part of our body, the muscles, the fascia, the connective tissue, and the entire nervous system respond to that. And they all change as a result. So let's say I damaged my muscle and I heal the muscle, right? The body just heals it itself. Doesn't mean that the fascia, the connective tissue, and the nervous system have acknowledged that. It's a very interesting thing because you would think that the body just realizes, oh, it's healed, so I don't need to do anything else, but that's just not the way that it works. And so oftentimes we need systems, ways of resetting the connective tissue and the nervous system. And yin is one way that we can do that, but I'm not going to claim that yin yoga is a silver bullet. And in my experience, again, I think I've spoken about this in the past, it's usually a combination of things that actually, in my experience, lead to a complete healing. So this hip, it was probably damaged at one point. Not necessarily majorly, but I maybe tweaked something. My body responded. And even though that initial injury is likely healed, again, I can pretty much do everything I want to do. There are likely either places where the connective tissue is stuck or kind of matted up, maybe because of the damage, or the nervous system is using my muscles and contracting my muscles to resist certain movements because those movements would have been damaging when I had the injury. And it's like the nervous system hasn't updated. It hasn't realized that that injury is gone. And that can create a lot of pain. Okay, we're going to take a little break. We'll just come back onto the back for a moment and relax. That's called a rebound, and we'll counter stretch after the rebound. So you may immediately want to hug your legs in. I'm going to encourage you to just wait. Okay, let's bring those legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. And this is the leg cradle. Just kind of follow your intuition here. What feels good? What's bringing a sense of balance? We were just stretching those fronts of the hips, so it feels good to hug the legs, at least for me. And then to make our way up to seated, we'll use the hinge. So we place the hands under the hips, palms down, extend the legs straight up, okay? And if there's any pain in your back, the key is to just bend your knees and do this with your knees bent. Otherwise, legs straight, lift the head and neck, take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, lower the legs toward the ground. Just before they touch, pause. Inhale, legs up, and exhale on up to seated. Okay, so moving right along, we're going to do the half butterfly. So the right leg is straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh. And we come forward and down. You notice I'm not flexing my foot, I'm not holding my foot. Everything's relaxed. And as always, I need to check 3 boxes in my own mind. The first is that this is within the range of what I sense is safe for my body to do. The next is I do feel the stretch in the back of my right thigh. And the final one is I feel that I can hold this for 3 minutes without coming out of it to bring myself relief. So if you need a little extra support under your left knee, under your forearms, under your forehead, so it's not quite so intense, then please do that, okay? Otherwise, we'll be here for a little over 2 more minutes here. Okay, so we switch sides. Take your time. This is called a half butterfly. And again, nice and relaxed. No need to try and go further than you can naturally come with gravity pulling you into it, as long as you feel the stretch here. Again, if you don't, then feel free to reach out to me. Let me know which postures don't work for you, that aren't giving you a stretch or painful. And I'll be happy to teach you alternatives that you could use instead. Okay, so let's make our way back onto our back. Take a few moments to relax there. Okay, we're going to bring those legs in, give them a little squeeze. Again, that's the leg cradle. And then we hinge up to seated. Okay, once you're up, we again come into a tabletop. You may want to turn to face the side of your mat. It's kind of up to you. And then we take the right leg to the right, the left knee away from it. And what we're looking for is a stretch in the inside of the straight leg. Those are your adductors. So this is a adductor stretch that we're doing. I call this one kickstand. It's just a kind of a half frog. Now you can stay up on your hands if you want. You can drop down to your elbows if you prefer. You can point your right foot any direction you want. You can have your left foot behind your knee or pull it in closer to your buttocks. It's really up to you. As long as what you're doing feels safe and you feel the stretch here in the inside of the thigh, that's all we're really looking for. And then again, we do need to be able to hold it. So, you know, not too much intensity. I think some people that are used to practicing more intense styles of yoga, where the holds are usually much shorter, they're used to just like dropping into something, having it be super intense for a few seconds, and then they move on to the next thing. And so sometimes these people, when they come to practice yin, they are looking for that same level of intensity, and then they find they can't hold it the full time, and they may even get frustrated, be like, well, why, this is stupid, why are we holding it for so long? But one of the reasons we hold it for so long is because to affect the connective tissue, the fascia, not just the muscle tissue. So that's a little bit of a false distinction, because there is connective tissue in your muscle, but there's connective tissue in every kind of tissue of your body. However, there's also connective tissue that is separate from your muscles and separate from your bones and separate from your joints. So you can have just connective tissue that surrounds these structures. And that's usually what I'm referring to when I'm talking about that. It's not an on or off thing. You can have, tissue that moves gradually from being more of the sarcomeres, which are the muscle, the contractive tissue of the muscle, right? To more and more of the connective tissue, which it has its own contractile properties. So the muscle and the connective tissue don't always work together, which is sometimes why even when a muscle has been healed or rehabilitated, you actually need to spend time addressing the connective tissue specifically. And this is one of the things that we can do in yin yoga. So again, this is why it's nice to have this in addition to the more active styles that we do in yoga. All right, let's go ahead and switch sides. Please take your time. This one, at least for me, can be rather intense. So I really feel that on the inside of my leg there. And, if I rush, I could hurt something, right? If I'm too quick with it. All right. So again, yours might look very different than this. This is just where I am today. This is one of those stretches that it's evolved for me over the years. And it used to be really easy for me to get a good stretch in the inside of the thigh. And these days it's getting a little more challenging to find it, which is a good sign. It means that actually the tension in that part of my body is less. So I'm more flexible. It's harder for me to get a stretch. So I'm not complaining by any means. I'll remind everybody, please check the 3 boxes in your own mind. This is within the range of what I sense is safe for my body. I feel the stretch in the inside of my left thigh, and I'm going to be able to stay here. So that stay here, again, is generally what allows yin yoga to address connective tissue. And this is one of the reasons why many people who've done this class with me, they will say that maybe they used to have a back pain, and once they started practicing yin regularly, that back pain went away, or it's much less, or it's much more manageable. Now, again, yin yoga, does it cure everything? No. So again, I've had issues in my body that have not gone away just by practicing yin, although I suspect they're much less than they would have been if I had not practiced yin yoga, and yoga in general, but yin yoga specifically. And as I was saying earlier, very often for me to heal something completely, it is I don't know what the right term is, maybe shotgun approach. It's me working on my own and then working with body workers, people who work with the soft tissue of the body on a regular basis, whether that be an acupuncturist, a chiropractor, a physical therapist, massage therapist, or all of the above. So in the West, I think we very often get into this mindset that there's a pill or a surgery that I can take. A doctor can give me like one thing and then I'm cured and problem is solved. But this hasn't really been my experience with healing and health. I think that it very often is a multifaceted approach that actually leads to healing. Okay, let's come on out of that. We'll make our way back onto our back. And let's just relax. Okay, we bring those legs in, give them a little squeeze. Shake it out a bit. And then hinge on up to seated. Okay, so that last move was called abduction. And now we'd like to adduct the femur. Again, this is our target, you might say, for today's class. So I'm going to cross my right knee over my left, and the idea is I want my right knee to go to the right as far as possible. Okay, so in the last pose, we were bringing the right leg to the right and the left leg to the left as much as possible. Now I want to do the opposite. I want to cross them over. So if I can do so, I bring this foot back and I bring this foot back as well. And then as I come forward, I begin to feel stretch out here. So these are your abductors. So we're stretching the abductors. It's called a shoelace. Now again, this is one where you may want a little bit of support. It might be a little too intense. Some people like sitting on something here because they don't have a lot of rotation. And so their foot is maybe pushing them over to one side. Keep that in mind. It's okay to sit on something if that makes this easier for you. Let's switch sides. All right, everyone, let's take a little break. Make our way back onto the back. Just relax for a few moments before we continue. All right, let's pull the legs in, give them a little squeeze. We can shake out any lingering discomfort there. And then we will hinge up again. And then let's come back to bear pose, which we started in, also known as marauding bear. And we can move around a bit. At this stage, this is both a warm-up and a counter stretch. And it might feel very different than that first one that you did. I know it does for me. I feel some of the same things, but definitely I feel certain aches that weren't there at the beginning because of what we've done. And then certain aches are not there because of we've moved and we've stretched. And then again, we can do a little bit of down dog here. Okay, let's transition to our next posture. This is sleeping swan. So that right knee comes forward. The foot comes over to the left side of the mat. The hips are down and back. And you could stay upright for the 3 minutes, but most people are going to want to come down to their forearms. Okay? So here you are on your in your sleeping swan, and we want to feel this in the outside of our right hip. Now your right knee could point straight ahead, but I think you'll notice mine's out at a slight angle. That's totally fine. It could be very exaggerated if you wanted. My right foot is basically touching my left hip. But some people with more rotation in their femur, and that's what we're doing right now, we're externally rotating the femur, they can pull that foot up rather far without any trouble. And so if you have that in your hip, that mobility, then by all means use it. There's no harm in doing that as long as there's no strain in your knee or ankle and you just feel it as a nice stretch in your right hip, then by all means. The hips, you know, some people get very obsessive about having the hips square to the ground. There's nothing wrong with squaring them, but there's also nothing wrong in this posture with rocking to your right hip or to your left hip if you prefer, okay? So don't think that that's inherently dangerous or wrong or bad. It's not, at least not in this style of yoga. It's perfectly fine. Okay, we're going to switch sides. This is the sleeping swan. Sometimes students ask me, well, what's the difference between sleeping swan and pigeon? I would say it's just in the approach. It's not in the posture, it's in the approach. So it really is, you could do a pigeon in this way, but most people do pigeon again with pushing themselves back. They might try things like pulling their leg in. And I'm not even going to say that that prevents it from being a yin posture. You could do those things and still get the benefits of yin. But generally, with yin postures, we're looking for the most relaxed way to do things. Generally, right? So anytime you're hearing me say that, you know there are exceptions. And it's so hard for us humans because I think just the way our brains are wired, we're again, sort of like with the healing, we're often just looking for like the one simple answer. We just want it to be, you know, okay, I need a hip surgery, or, oh, I need to take this drug and that's going to cure me and it's going to solve my problem. And, you know, again, I just don't think that's reality. That's just not the way that it works. So, again, very often healing is going to be a multifaceted thing. People's experience will vary. I can talk in generalities, but there will be, you know, other experiences, other truths, if you will, other perceptions. And that isn't me trying to be wishy-washy or get out of telling you the truth about something. That's just really, truly, honestly been my experience. And as tempting as it is to, you know, want to believe that science will one day just give us the one answer, right? The simple, here's what you need to do to heal. Here's what you need to do to be right. Here's right. Here's wrong. Here's healthy. Here's unhealthy. I've just not seen any real evidence for this, despite people trying to live that way. Because again, it's so satisfying for our mind, isn't it? Just, here's the answer. There's one answer and here it is. Okay, let's go ahead and come on out of that. We'll bring the legs in, give them a nice squeeze. We're coming now to our last set, and this is going to be what we call internal rotation. And we want to be extremely mindful with this last set. So when you're ready, hinge on up to seated. And what we'd like to do, this is going to be our half saddle pose. So we take the right foot and start here. The toes pointing back and the heel right up against your hip. Now what we're looking at again is the femur bone. So if you imagine, if you drew a line at the front of your knee, okay, and let's just say this is the top of the line or this is a pointer. I want this pointer to point inward. That's what creates internal rotation. We were doing this in the last posture. Now I want this to point in. How do I do that? Well, I can't do it with this bone alone. I need to use this one. Again, this is your tibia, and this is your calf or your leg. This is your thigh. So I bring this foot away from my hip. And again, if I had this line, now it's pointing like this. It's not pointing upright anymore. Now it's pointing at an angle. It's exactly what I want. Now this is about it for me, and I have actually quite a lot of internal rotation. How do I know that's it? Because it begins to hurt my knee. I don't really feel it in my hip. Again, I have quite a bit of internal rotation in my hip, and I also have some tibial rotation. So that's what allows me to do that safely. So there's no strain in my knee or my ankle. For other people, if you saw their leg in this position, it would mean they had broken their leg, their knee was busted. Maybe if they fell skiing, you'd see them like this. They'd be like, oh my God. So again, we're all different in that regard. So you need to find your safe limit, and that might be here, and that's fine. That's just that is what it is. Now, this is an exception to a rule in this class. Usually we want to feel a stretch, and if we don't, we say the pose isn't working. You may not feel anything here. And if you go further, you start to feel pain. So that sets our limit for this posture today, is the pain here. If I begin to feel pain here or here, that's my limit, even if I don't feel the stretch. So remember, safety, then the stretch, and then the comfort. It goes in that order. So if I'm at the limit of my safety, then I don't go there. Okay, I'm going to start the timer. Now you can stay upright, but many people like to lower back in this posture. The ones that have the ability, it is more relaxing and it's more intense. Now I feel a stretch of the front of my thigh. That stretch isn't really our objective today. So again, staying upright is perfectly fine. You already have the internal rotation if you've done this properly with your hip. The most common question in this posture that I get is it okay if my knee is off the ground? The answer is yes, absolutely. I don't know if you can see, mine is slightly elevated. I can force it down, but I actually feel more strain in the knee that way. And generally speaking, the more strain, the less safe. That's a generalization again. And again, we need to remember that anytime I'm generalizing, which in a sense is always, there's always going to be an exception to that rule. So we don't want to, again, get too literal, too dogmatic, too attached to any one of these ideas. We want to have a kind of loose and friendly relationship with them. They are guides. They are not hard and fast rules. And pretty much anything, you know, I'm saying this in terms of my teaching, but that's almost true in anything in life. You're just going to notice that there's going to be an exception to every rule. There'll always come up something where something you'd learned as truth just does not apply. Okay? And again, from my perspective as a spiritual teacher, as a yoga teacher, a lot of what I teach is actually what you could call mindfulness. And that's a little bit of a catchphrase these days. It's becoming part of popular culture, I think. Maybe many of you have seen videos on YouTube or on Instagram talking about mindfulness and how beneficial it is to meditate or be mindful. So from my perspective, if there were a simple rule that we could follow that always led to a positive outcome, we could be very unmindful, right? I could just follow the rule and it would always lead to the best result. It would always lead to the right or best outcome. And then I could kind of go into a trance or a sleepwalk. And that's actually, from a yogic perspective, how most people actually live. They live most of their life in a kind of a sleepwalk, kind of a trance. Let's switch sides. You may have to come up. I, again, have a lot of internal rotation, so I can just take the leg and put it into position, but don't use me as your model for this particular posture. I, again, have I'm an outlier. I have more rotation than most people will. I can do things safely that other people will not be able to do. So it has nothing to do with having practiced yoga a lot. I was just born with bones and joints that were shaped a certain way. And that is good for certain things. And it's also been not so good for other things. And that's generally how things are in our body. Okay, so if you have the physique to be a linebacker in the NFL, that may not be the best physique to be a ballerina or a Olympic diver. And with training, exercise, you can shape and draw out certain gifts that are there in your body naturally, but only so much. So you're never going to turn an Olympic weightlifter, someone who has a physique or propensity for doing the deadlift, let's say, and competing at an Olympic level, you're never going to turn them into, again, say someone who could dance professionally and is going to do that and have the physique to do that kind of thing. The types of bones in the hip joints that you need, the physique that you need to be able to do those two things are going to be very, very different. The ballet dancer is going to have much less stability in his body, but that's going to allow him to create the lines that are necessary in ballet and to do the types of things that are necessary in ballet. And the deadlifter is going to have a lot of stability in his body. That's not going to allow him to create those lines, but it's going to allow him to lift a lot of weight. So this is why it can be unfortunate for us when we compare ourselves to others, because our body is going to give us certain gifts and we won't have certain problems that other people will have. And we might have certain problems that others don't. And that's just, it's a kind of a mix. So there's not a perfect body out there that's good for everything. That's kind of my main point here. It's not like there's a perfect body that is good at skiing and good at swimming and good at running and good at weightlifting and good at yoga and good at dance. It doesn't exist. Certain body types are going to have a natural propensity or gift to do certain things. All right, let's unwind. Let's just relax for a moment. And then we'll bring our legs in and give them a nice squeeze. And then, as usual, grab your phone or your timer, set it for 6 minutes, and then just come into pentacle or shavasana and allow your body to rest in stillness for that time. You can think of that like a little meditation.